Hi, it's Nicole for Simple Stories, and today I am creating a double page wonderland using simple vintage flannel season. I had a bunch of photos from our local Winterfest parade where I live, and the majority of my photos were taken in horizontal orientation. So, a lot of times when I notice that all of my photos are a singular orientation, I try to either reuse a design element I've used in the past that worked for that, or I will look for a specific sketch. In this case, I found a sketch that was geared towards 6x6 paper pads, and normally I would be all for that. However, I decided to just follow the sketch but use the 12-inch papers. I really liked the larger size that was in the 12-inch papers, and that was just kind of where my mood was going. So I'm going to look through and kind of see if I can basically come up with 6 patterns that I like, that I'm drawn to, and that I think will also work well together. And for me, picking paper is probably a longer process than some. I think because paper is my favorite product out of an entire collection, I kind of go back and forth sometimes. I will sometimes tell myself not to use something because it's a favorite, and I have over the years slowly just kind of adopted the idea of when I feel like I want to save something, I need to just go ahead and use it because these products are amazing. Like, don't save them, use them so that they're on your layout. You can enjoy them, you can look at them. So yeah, I'm going to cut down 4-inch strips from these pattern papers here. A lot of these are B-sides. I would say that More Busy Plaid is probably an A-side, and possibly the one with the text on it. And rearranging pattern paper is just one of those things that I will kind of spend too much time on sometimes. It either looks good to me or it doesn't look good to me. So a lot of times I just move things around until I get to a point where I like it. So when I first saw the Simple Vintage Flannel Season collection, I feel like every time I get a Simple Vintage collection, I sort of pause because I think vintage style collections are just not something that I naturally gravitate towards. I think that they are beautifully designed. They're just something that sort of causes me to pause and really think about the layout that I'm going to create and the photos that I think will match that, just because it's outside of my personal style and outside of like what I would naturally gravitate towards. But I love a challenge like that. And when I kind of sat down and was looking through everything, I didn't even use any of the snowmen, but they reminded me of that like classic Frosty the Snowman cartoon. I don't think it's a direct copy of that. I think it's just that sort of style. It's kind of giving a Christmas story. It's not super, I don't think there's any Christmas words. It's definitely winter. It's definitely that nostalgic style. And for whatever reason, it was reminding me of some of the floats that I had seen at the parade last year. And so I thought, well, let's go with that. And then because all of my photos are in that horizontal orientation, I went and found a sketch that would work for that. And basically, I like the fact that that's going to kind of mimic the parade, where you're sitting there and everything's kind of going by you. So yeah, I like to try to tell you guys like how I navigate using a collection that I might not necessarily have picked for myself, but am creatively challenged. And I want to say almost every single time it ends up being a favorite layout. Like I end up surprising myself by the end of the process. And I think it's because the products are designed so well that everything just works really well together. Even when you have this vintage style, vintage vibe going on with everything and you're pairing it with super modern photos, everything somehow just works. So I did print all of my photos in 4x3s, and I did go ahead and cut them apart. I wasn't very strategic when I printed them. I should have arranged them to where I didn't need to cut the photos apart. It would have been a little bit easier. But I wasn't thinking. I was just kind of editing, dragging, dropping, printing, and, I'll arrange it later. Events like this, I do like to try and arrange my photos in the order that they happen if I can. I think the only caveat to this one might be like the group photo of all of the girls. That happened prior, but it's fine. And 2 of these photos I want to say I took from Google. Like I had found a Facebook post after the event that had some professional photos. So I went ahead and snagged those because they were a different angle, which was kind of a nice way to mix in some variation to the photos that I had taken where everything was from my vantage point. And then I felt like they didn't stand out very well. So a trick that I like to do is the white paint technique, where you just kind of take some white paint. You can do an ink dauber, a makeup sponge. In this instance, I just grabbed a Q-tip and just kind of put the paint on the edge like you're inking it. Let that dry really well before you put your photos down, and it just creates that delineation between the photos that you would get from like a photo collage, but has a little bit more like texture and interest. And then I took Winter and Wonderland from the chipboard, which after I've done all this, I need to go back for whatever reason. Winter did not stick. Wonderland stuck really well. Every other chipboard element I used worked perfectly. That word winter just did not want to stick. So I'm wondering if I had just touched it too many times and got like either oil for my hands or something. Before I put it in my album, I am going to make sure to put some liquid adhesive underneath that and any of the chipboard. Then I like to dump out the die cut packs and kind of dig through them and do a quick sort where anything I'm drawn to, I'll put at the top. Anything that I'm like, this doesn't fit this layout, or, the words aren't matching like the theme, I just kind of put down at the bottom. I'll put it back in the package before I kind of move on. But I like to just do a quick sort of things that I think match my theme, match the design that I'm trying to go for, and things that I like, things that kind of fit my personal style, if that makes sense. For me, I'm somebody that when you're looking at like a ton of product, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. So dumping it out and doing a sort and then putting back everything that for this layout is a no kind of frees up the space on my desk and frees up some of that like decision making. And then I typed up my journaling into a block, and I'm going to use this to tuck up along the top of my photos and essentially include it into this like scene that I'm going to build across the top. If you are new here, I love scene building. If you have been here for a while, you guys know this. I can either go overboard and create a really full scene. Today, it's going to be a little bit more scaled back because I didn't want to cover up a ton of those pattern papers. I think that's like handwritten text one is a favorite. So I was really kind of strategic about what, where I was placing things because I didn't want to cover up a lot of that text. Sometimes if I feel like something is just too plain, I will take one of these like pre-made clusters or a tag or like one of those big labels and kind of tuck it behind it. You're not going to see a lot of it, but seeing the edges of it just helps fill in the visual interest of everything that's going on. I've said this before, when people are asking me advice on scene building, or I would say even like cluster building, if you're not already having things cross borders and touch other elements, I would strongly suggest doing that. You can see the Wonderland title is actually touching the top of my photos. And I think a lot of us, our instinct is to push it further up and kind of have it be floating. I like visually when things are touching and everything feels like it's all together and it's all intentional. And sometimes when I'm doing a scene like this, I like to kind of think about if you took all of these things and you put them in your hand and you kind of sprinkled them down on your desktop, they're not going to land evenly distributed. They're not going to land to where they're not touching other things. So that's kind of where I start thinking about like layering and overlapping and stuff like that. With this one, I don't think I put anything that was going to cross the center margin. I'm kind of 50-50 on that. If I'm going to have something cross the center margin, I try to make it be a really big die cut so that when you cut it in half, you don't have these like tiny pieces to try to glue back together, and then you don't have like a small image that is then split by the time I put it in a D-ring album, if that makes sense. But I know some people that just will not put anything on the center margin and cut through it, whether it's a photo, a die cut, anything like that. I think that definitely goes back to personal preference. You do you do what you like. I just share what I do and what I like with you guys. And I hope that you find some inspiration. I hope you find some techniques to try. I love seeing your guys' scrap lifts. I love hearing when you kind of look at product a little bit differently. I feel like that means that I'm doing my quote unquote job well by sharing and inspiring. So if you ever scrap lift me or are inspired, please come back and let me know. It's one of my favorite things to read in the comments. So finishing up, I tucked in some tags. I really liked those stamps, the little sled. I used one of the deers. I felt like the deer kind of pulled in some of that feminine type of style because the girls. And then a lot of times when I do like a wallpapering of photos like this, I like to bring in some phrase stickers on the empty spots of a photo. I think it just helps blend the embellishments across the page. I think it helps bring a little bit of more texture to an area of the layout that doesn't have any texture because the photos are essentially so flat. And then I brought in a smaller little cluster down here on the bottom right. And then this is going to give me a place to stamp my date, which I did remember to do. I was pretty proud of myself. This is not in the pile of layouts that need to have a date added to it. So I'm going to go ahead, roll my date on there. And then this is typically the point where I just kind of go back and double check everything that I've got, see if there's anything else that when I was first sorting through the die cuts that I wanted to use and didn't have a chance to. If there's spots on the layout that just kind of feel like they need something else, that's when I will check things like the chipboard and the foam and look at those kind of tiny elements that I can sprinkle in amongst the other stuff. So there is the final image of my 2-page layout, and you can see my winter fell, and I did not notice when I took the photos. It's a little embarrassing, but I'm pretty sure the ones that Simple Stories is posting I fixed. It's just the ones for my video. So I'm going to leave you guys here. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave me a thumbs up if you liked this. Subscribe if you have not. Leave me any questions you may have down in the comments, and hopefully I will catch you guys in another video. Bye!